I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess, and today I have my August wrap-up for you. So I read 7 books in the month of August, which is not as much as I have been reading in the last 2 months. However, a few of the books that I read kind of took me a bit longer. So I would say it's okay. Let's jump right in. The first book is a reread, but I hadn't reread it in a really long time. This is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I decided to reread this because my husband and I actually rewatched the live action movie, which we both saw as children. So my husband just got into a mood and remembered it. I was like, "Did you ever see that?" I was like, "Yeah, it's a very good movie." And so we decided to watch it. And then of course I wanted to reread the book to see how it compares. This is the story of Mary Lennox, a young girl in a British family living in India. And when cholera wipes out her family and all of her servants, she is sent back to England to live at the house of her uncle. But it's kind of desolate in the middle of a moor. She doesn't really know what to do until she finds this garden that has been locked up for 10 years. Love this book. I loved this book as a child, and it was a 5-star read for me this time as well. I think technically it's probably more of a 4-star read, but the nostalgia, I had such a good time. My one issue is that toward the end of the book, it shifts from focusing on Mary to focusing on her cousin Colin, so that at the end, Colin is actually the last character we're looking at, and we don't really get much of a resolution for Mary. So that did bother me, but not enough to bump it down, just because it was such a fun, lovely, nostalgic read that reminded me of my childhood. This copy was given to me by my brother and my sister-in-law when I was about 5 or 6, I think. So I have had it for a very long time, and it's very special to me. And I just had such a lovely time revisiting this story. Next up is one that I decided to just pick up on a whim. This was How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is a book of short stories that is connected with Holly Black's Folk of the Air trilogy, specifically focusing on Cardan, who is the King of Elfhame by the end of the series. So these stories mostly focus on his past, with the exception of 2 stories at the beginning and then at the end that are kind of the overarching, I guess, plot of this collection. I gave this 3.5 stars. Honestly, I felt like it was kind of unnecessary. I will say I enjoyed the illustrations, which are stunning. Absolutely beautiful. So I would say the 1/2 star is probably for that. I enjoyed the stories that involved, oh my god, and I'm not going to be able to remember her name because I read this right at the beginning of the month. Hold on. I enjoyed these stories that involved the troll woman Aslog, who kind of appears throughout the collection and tells Cardan a variation on the same story about this boy with a heart of stone. So I really liked those ones, and the end story tied up the plot with Aslog very nicely. However, some of these stories just felt like repeats of what we already knew from the trilogy. So that was kind of like, eh. I'm still planning to keep it because it is a beautiful, beautiful book with these illustrations. Oh my goodness. And I do love the series as a whole, and I like having the whole set on the shelf. But I would say that it's not really a necessary addition to the story, and it's something that only really big fans of it will want to pick up. Next up is a book I was reading for my dissertation, and it is from the library, so it does not have a real cover. This is Literary Women by Ellen Mowers. I picked this up because it's been mentioned in a lot of the other secondary sources I've been reading, so I figured I would pick it up and see how it was. I ultimately gave this 2 stars. I was not a big fan. There were a few parts that I thought were good, but overall I did not agree with Mower's reading of many of the texts she was looking at. And I also felt that she talked way too much about male authors and what they were doing for a book called Literary Women. Like, there were whole analyses of novels by men in here. And I was just like, why is this here? I thought we were focusing on women writers. So I did find some useful things for my dissertation, I will say. However, it was definitely not my favorite. Next up was one of the books that I got for my birthday, and it was my most anticipated book of the year. This is Painted Devils by Margaret Owen. This is the sequel to Little Thieves, which I read, I think, back in March and absolutely adored. And I adored this too. What an amazing sequel. Oh my goodness. This has bumped Little Thieves and Painted Devils back up to the #1 slot for my top books of the year. I grouped series together. Oh, so good. This picks up after where Little Thieves leaves off, so I don't want to give too many spoilers, but ultimately Vanya starts a cult by accident, and it goes very wrong. So I loved being back with these characters. I adore Vanya's narrative voice. She is such a fun character. Very flawed, but still so lovable. I enjoyed getting to see her relationship with Emmerich continue to develop. I enjoyed getting to find out more about her past. And I really loved that even though the main plot of the Goose Girl story is over as of Little Thieves, there was a reference, like a really important thing that references it in here that was completely new and that I'm so glad Owen included. This book was so great. It leaves off on such a cliffhanger. I am dying for the next book. Dying. Absolutely loved it. 5 stars, if you can't tell. Next up was one that I read for my dissertation. This is Aurora Floyd by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. This is a sensation novel focused on the main character, Aurora Floyd, who is the daughter of a very wealthy banker who has a secret. And as she is going through courtship and marriage, that secret is threatened to be exposed, and it could be truly life-ending for her. Saying much more than that will give spoilers, given there are spoilers right on the back of the book. So, okay, way to give the whole plot away. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I gave it 4 stars. I did not like it as much as Lady Audley's Secret. I think there is less tension and kind of more, I guess it's kind of more convoluted than Lady Audley's Secret. Like, there were some things that we spent a really long time on that I wasn't sure if that was entirely necessary. However, I still really enjoyed the character of Aurora Floyd and seeing her story. I will say the ending gets wrapped up a little too quickly and could have been extended a little, especially considering how long we spent on other things toward the beginning of the book that didn't seem as important. I will be using this in my dissertation. Braddon is looking at a lot of interesting stuff about storytelling and how storytelling and realism don't necessarily match up, and how in stories melodrama is okay where it wouldn't exist in real life because it is a story. So I am going to be using it to discuss that in my dissertation. So I'm very glad I read it. I think it's a great read. just not as good as Lady Audley. Next up was my George Eliot project read for the month. This is The Mill on the Floss. I finally finished it. I did not read the entire book this month. I had gotten about halfway through the last time I started it. I don't remember what month that was in, but earlier this year, and then I had to put it down. So I just picked up where I had left off and finished the second half. I gave this 4 stars this time around, which means it has gone down in rating for me. I discuss all of this in my video on the book, which you can have a look at, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about it here. I still like it. I still like the character of Maggie Tulliver, but I found the ending a lot more disappointing than I have in the past. And then the final book that I read was The Little Friend. I have tried reading this 3 times, gotten halfway through, and then stopped. Not because I didn't like it, but just because life happened, or I got out of the mood, or it was on audiobook and I had to return it to the library. So this summer I was like, I'm finally finishing The Little Friend, and I did. And I really loved this. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is a coming of age story about a young girl named Harriet living in Mississippi in the 70s. Harriet's brother was murdered when she was a baby. And this summer, she decides that she's gonna try to find out who killed him. However, I would say this is not a book that is about answers. Everything at the end is left very ambiguous. So if you're somebody that likes to have definite answers to everything by the end of the book, this isn't the book for you, because we're left with a lot of questions and just open ends, kind of how we are in real life, honestly. Because whereas in the books, you might be able to find your brother's killer and avenge him, sometimes in real life that doesn't really happen. This is just an amazing character study, particularly of Harriet, but we also get all kinds of other characters, including the Ratliff brothers, Eugene, Danny, and Farish, and also Harriet's family, her sister Allison, her grandmother Edie, and her mother Charlotte, and all of her aunts, who are just amazing. I love the aunts. I would say this is not a 5-star read for me, probably because it is in the third person, and we get a lot of parts that go away from Harriet and to other characters that I felt like weren't necessarily needed. Some of them I did get why they were there. Other times I was like, we didn't really need to be following this person. We could have gone back to Harriet and maybe have been doing something more interesting. However, I did really love this book, and I am so glad I read it. Donna Tartt is one of my favorite authors, officially, because I have now read all 3 of her books fully. And I am very glad I got to finally finish this. So, those are the 7 books that I read in August. Let me know down in the comments below, have you read any of them? What did you think? What did you read this August? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.